Today on Locked On Red Wings, here's part 2 of our crossover meeting of the minds with Greg from Grind Line and Daniella Bruce from the Red and White Authority.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we're back, and we are going to take a look forward at the season. What do the Red Wings need to do to stay in this playoff hunt, to squash the dreams of the Toronto Maple Leafs? Maybe what they're going to have to do at the trade deadline and the keys to the rest of the season. But I kind of want to start with what still needs work. And I think we can go right off of what Scotty was saying, letting up all those shots per game, 32.43 shots against per game. I think my one point is that, and Daniela might have something to say about this, is the defense has tightened up, but it needs to now stay consistent. You have trust in Lyon. You're banking on him to make some of those saves, but I think the defense needs to keep the level of play they're doing right now, because it has gotten better.
Yeah, you took the word right out of my mouth, and it's consistency. It's being able to do that on a night in, night out basis, which we've seen through the month of January. And I think that's great, with the exception of the Dallas game. But that's an example of what can happen if this team comes out flat and just for one period, or they don't play at their best for a 10-minute stretch throughout a game. They have to stay sharp. And I know Derek Lalonde says this a lot, so it might be kind of beating the dead horse at this point, but it's they're not good enough to have the off games. They can't go out there and have their B game and expect to be in the mix. And that's no knock to these guys. We're talking about how great they've been playing, and it might be a little bit above what everybody expected right now. But if you're going to hold that, you have to make sure you're on your A game all the time. And the key is consistency there, just being able to find something that works for them consistently. And I think the goaltending boost is definitely going to help.
Yeah, Brian, what do you got as what needs work so far, or for the rest of the season?
Well, we talk a lot about, the depth scoring, right? We rant and rave about it. But one person I would like to see score a little bit more consistently, who's flown a little bit under the radar, I think, because the depth scoring's been so good, is Alex DeBrincat. He's 18 goals on the season now. He is second on the team, but when you traded for him, and thankfully because he kind of forced his way to Detroit, you didn't have to give up a ton for him. You were expecting maybe not a 40-goal score. He did that twice in Chicago, but at least a 30-goal score. But he scored, Scotty, 6 goals since his...
Yeah, I forget what our stat was, and he's added one to it, but it was 5 since late November at even strength or something. Yeah.
He scored 9 goals in 7 games at the start of the season, and then he has now scored 9 since then. He scored most recently against Dallas. We were joking. We joke on Locked On Red Wings. We do an episode about a player, and then immediately they turn it on. We did an episode about Andrew Kopp and how he hasn't been producing, and then he's been on a tear. And then the same thing happened with Alex DeBrincat, where we were like, when will he score again? Then he scored that night. But, I mean, the consistency needs to be there with Alex DeBrincat. He's getting a lot of shots on net, and his shooting percentage is low, way lower than it normally is for him. He's just kind of snake-bitten. And so I don't know what needs to change, or if anything needs to change. Maybe he needs to just keep hammering, and then eventually the dams will break. But this is a guy you brought in to be at least, pair with Larkin as another 30-plus goal scorer. And it's kind of been slow going for him. I still have faith, not giving up. But, I mean, if you can add 30 goals by Alex DeBrincat on top of all the depth scoring you're already getting from the rest of this roster, you're looking at a team that is not just 4 lines deep, but also a threat in the top 6 as well. And that is a dangerous formula to defend against if you're another team, because either you're trying to match up all 4 lines against their 4 lines, or you're trying to make your matchups heavy against the top 6. You can't do both unless you're double shifting your best guys all the time, and then you'll just get worn down. So you need Alex DeBrincat to be Alex DeBrincat if this team, you want to make a deep push into the playoffs, assuming you get there. But right now, the trend's looking good.
Daniela, do you think bumping Cat back up to align with Larkin and Raymond is maybe the key to him there?
For now, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what move is made when Patrick Kane does return to the lineup, because it kind of seemed like they had a little thing going where it's like Cat and Kane are going to play together, Larkin and Raymond are going to play together. And you're seeing, obviously, that's broken up right now without Kane. So I think it could help. We've seen a lot more chances with that line, and you can tell that they're just a high-flying offensive line. When the three of them are out there together, something's happening on the ice. So I think it could help, but I think it will be interesting now, only one game until the break as we're talking right now, and that's against Ottawa, what will happen when Patrick Kane does come back.
Yeah, that was a question from Christian on Twitter, is does Kane slot back into that second line when he comes back? I think he does, and I think you still keep Alex DeBrincat on the top with Larkin and Raymond. And with how, like you said, Andrew Kopp has been on a tear, and he's been playing very well, not just defensively, which he normally does, but the offense has really picked up. Maybe you try a second line of an Andrew Kopp, JT Compher, and Patrick Kane. And then you can play you move David Perron down to a third line, and I think you have to try and maybe shake it up a little bit, because you're right. If you could get 30 goals, I think we said 30 to 35 is what we wanted out of Alex DeBrincat for this season. And if he can hit that, and what you need to do to make him hit that or help him hit that is play him with Larkin and Lucas Raymond, because him and Larkin had pretty instant chemistry when they started playing. And it's coming back. Like you said, he scored the other night. And I think, Brian, what we need to do is before every game, we just make a list. We'll mention half the list, you mention the other half, and then everyone will have a great game. But I think Kane, when he comes back, I think he does slot back on that second line, and I think you do see a little bit of a shakeup. But Scotty, what do you think we got to do to keep Cat going?
Yeah, well, I mean, for Cat, yeah, like I do think, to Daniella's point, that the navigation of him with Kane is going to be really interesting, because, I mean, like she said, like for a while, right? I mean, it seems still really like they're gonna kind of just be together forever, which is like adorable. But and if it works, then that's great. But I he did
make a Lifetime movie out of it.
Right. He did get off to such a hot start at the beginning of the year, like unsustainably hot, to be fair. But yeah, I don't know, man. I think that part of me just thinks that what Brian said is like kind of true, and it's like he's just gonna have to keep like gripping and ripping and hope that like some of them just start finding the back of the net. I think maybe a little bit is snake bite, which is kind of a cop out answer, but he's getting shots off. He's still getting plenty of shots off every night. It's not like he doesn't have attempts. So I don't know. I think it'll be really interesting to see how it looks after the All-Star break, though, for sure.
Move the Nets a foot to the left and he'll score so many more goals, because it seems like it's been a lot wider right off the post. So if they just shift the net a little bit, I think
like that one corner, just add like an extension to that one.
An extension, corner. Yeah, exactly. Just extend the corner.
He's also
a little bit.
Been robbed quite a few times. Like him
absolutely.
Specifically, I can think of 3 instances of him just being absolutely robbed, like goaltender making a Vezina level, like Andrei Vasilevsky save. Like I think Andrei Vasilevsky actually made one of them. Yes, right.
Yeah,
that was him, right?
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, it's not fair. Vasilevsky is not human, so like, I mean, that's a gimme for him.
Absurd.
Yeah.
Has anyone else got any point? What else do we need to do to keep going forward? I think it is we're at a solid spot. Yeah. I think if you keep doing what you're doing and you win 19 of your remaining games, you're in. I mean, that's over 90. That's like 95, 96 points, I think, on the season. I think the cutoff, when I looked at Micah on Twitter, Ineffective Math, I think the cutoff for our division is 91.2 points. I don't know. The red line was overlapping. Was it 91.2, Brian?
It was 91.1, and the Red Wings were projected at 91.2.
Okay. So
that's
I think
playoff hockey, baby.
That's playoff hockey right there.
Yeah. So I think they can do it as long as they stay healthy, as long as the goaltending stays consistent, and they do just what they've done through January, continue to do that through the rest of the season. And I think they're in a really solid spot. When they come back from All-Star break, I don't think they play until February 10th, which is a stupid long break.
And then immediately go to the West Coast right after that, Western Canada.
Yeah, which I'm assuming will probably be the dad's trip.
I don't know. I have not heard anything about.
Yeah, that's your wheelhouse.
Normally it's West Coast trips.
Yeah, or they did it like a Nashville, Dallas one year too. So I don't know if there's something there. Yeah, they did I don't know what they'll do for that. I haven't heard anything about it. It's actually a question I should probably ask.
Yeah, because I hear all the other guys doing this. Daniella, write that down. Go ahead and when is the
I don't know if you're a dad. Do you want to go to Western Canada in February? Like,
No,
is that the trip we
no,
want to
no.
do?
Well,
Unless
do
they're,
they
like, ice
like
fishing or something.
do they switch it off year to year? Like, is this a mom's year or is this don't they like switch it off too?
So the last one was dad's, but they did do mom. Yeah, so I guess if they do keep the rotation going,
Oh, okay.
it would be a mom's trip.
Yeah.
Moms are not going to want to go to Western Canada in February.
They definitely are not going to Western Canada.
Vancouver, let's go.
Okay, so I hear Vancouver's pretty sweet, and it's on my list of places
Vancouver's
to go.
cool.
Same.
So,
Vancouver's cool.
so I want to talk a little bit about trade deadline, because that's the other thing that's coming up after the All-Star break. It is like March 8th is trade deadline, I believe, somewhere around there. And we had talked about it a little bit, and at this point, I think where we're at and how they've been playing, that it would be really hard for me to see Yzerman as a seller. I don't see Yzerman as a seller. I don't see him as a huge buyer. But I think the point that I had made with Ryan was, if you could sell a couple pieces and improve the team from within by moving those pieces out, and recouping assets, then maybe that's the kind of move you make. So maybe you move a defenseman to bring in an Edvinsson, and at that point you're improving your defense and you're gaining assets at the same time. But I don't see, there are people that are asking about players like, we've been apparently linked by Dave Pagnotta to Jakob Chychrun and Frankie Vetrano. People are talking about Elias Lindholm, and I don't see moves that big happening, because I don't think we're jumping both feet into the fire to try and just push for a Stanley Cup right now. But I think the moves you could make would be from within to improve the team without having to expend capital, just in case something happens and you need that capital.
So I actually don't hate Chychrun just because of age, and like, so to your point, I agree with you. And Brian and I had this conversation earlier last week as well, where like, if there was I think that buying is probably in the team's best interest. I certainly, unless it completely falls apart, selling is not on the table if they're like even relatively close to like the postseason. But I think that now, if they are going to acquire talent, I agree with you. The talent that they would acquire would be people that you are confident are going to be assets for this team beyond this season, right? Like, to your point, I 100% agree. I don't think this is we're going to put all of our chips on 2024. Like, with all due respect, they were bad for far too long to make that an acceptable thing where like 2024 is all that matters, right? Like, this is something that you built, and like the Yzer plan was marketed as like this long-term sustainable product. And so that's why like Chychrun doesn't, that one kind of, and like there's been a ton of, like he says it's ridiculous, obviously these two fan bases can't stand each other. There's plenty of back and forth there. Like, that's its own kind of thing. But that one was somewhat interesting to me, just because he's still young enough where you could acquire him and you could have him on your blue line for years. Like, that's not like a rental necessarily. And you have a lot of younger assets, right? Like, you have, and they're not going to get rid of any of the top dogs, right? Like, the Edvinsson's not going anywhere. Like, that kind of goes without saying. Like, the high end prospects, they're not going to part ways with for that same reason. They're looking for sustained success. But if they can, in the margins, I guess this is really just a long way of saying what you just said, but like in the margins, right? Like, if they are going to bring someone in, it's going to be like, oh, they still have a lot of second round picks and third round picks. And like, those are good picks, but also you have a plethora of them. And like, you have a lot of kind of like B-level prospects, right? Who aren't like these blue chip slam dunks, but if you get an NHL, like proven NHL caliber player who's in their mid-20s, that can be on your team for the next 4 to 7 years, then like that's something, and that's, an extreme, I guess, amount of years too, but even just beyond this year period, I think that are the people that they're looking to acquire. I agree with you that it's not going to be like an all-in on this season thing, and I don't expect them to really be players in, unless it's really cheap, a lot of like more expensive rentals either.
We have a spare 15 defensive prospects.
Right, exactly.
That are never all going to make the Red Wings.
Yeah, I kind of also have a slightly different perspective on things. I like your idea, Greg, about the making trades to free up space for Edvinsson and Albert Johansson, but I view it as this at this point. And again, Scotty and I talked about it. We were kind of either they're going to stand pat or they're going to buy softly, a soft buy, because I think, and you mentioned this, Greg, this team's not going to win the Stanley Cup this year. It's highly unlikely unless they go on an incredible run. I mean, nothing's impossible. Playoffs are the playoffs. We've seen 8 seeds like the Kings going to win the Cup and win it all. Yeah, we saw the Blues. They were last place in January. It's not impossible. But the way this team's constructed right now, like Scotty said, this team is building for consistency in the future. I think Yzerman more than likely is going to want to see what this team has got the way it is now. And I think that trading pieces away to just allow Edvinsson to play isn't in the cards for this season, because that's going to mess with the chemistry and the gelling that this roster already has. And trust me, I'm with you. I think that without sounding too crass, there's a couple defensive players I would want to see Edvinsson up, and I would be willing to move a couple defensive players too. But I just think that Yzerman's interested in watching this team learn how to win while keeping the best prospects in the Grand Rapids Griffins, as much as I hate it, because I think Berggren, I think Albert Johansson, and I think Simon Edvinsson all deserve a spot in the NHL roster. But I think he wants them to learn how to play together and build that chemistry in the same system now that is being taught down there with the Griffins now that Watson's out. And learn how to play together and then come to the NHL level, kind of have that experience. Because I think if you throw Simon Edvinsson, I think he'd do fine, but I think it'd be weird to send Edvinsson to the NHL now while the team's trying to make a playoff push, where instead of doing it at the start of the season where he's allowed to make those crucial mistakes he needs to make to grow as a player. I think doing it now is a little late in the season. I think Yzerman's more or less going to probably stay pat. When it comes to the trade deadline, if anything, if he's going to move a defenseman out, it's going to move to be able to bring in a better defenseman back in via trade, an NHL veteran with playoff experience. I would kick the tires on Noah Hannafin, honestly, if I was looking at the Calgary Flames, because he's 27 years old. He's making $5 million. He's going to be a UFA like Chychrun. He kind of fits that window, but they're going to be asking for a ton in return.
Yeah.
But like you said, Greg, there's a plethora of prospects.
Yep.
So if you're going to trade for somebody, for me, it's not going to be a rental for 1 year. It's going to be somebody you think you can sign. That's my long monologue. Sorry.
Chychrun's knees still freak me out. I think that's the big thing. And if you were going for a younger defenseman, Noah Hannafin would be mine too. Because you've seen knee problems go sideways even after they've been repaired, or even more. I mean, Robbie Fabry's knees, you do 5 prayers every time you see him take a hit. Because you're like, I hope his knees are okay. But Daniela, what would be your trade starting today? If you had to do something, what would be your trade deadline strategy?
Right now, it would be just to stand pat. The one move that I could see happening, and I know people might come at me for this one, but it's because of his deal and his age and everything else, is David Perron. Like, just depending on what offers are on the table at that point and where the team is at. If this team is legitimately in a spot, David Perron's a huge playoff piece, and I don't think he's going anywhere, right? Mm-hmm. But if there's a good enough deal on the table and the team's still kind of teetering around that wild card spot, I could see them trying to get something for him if it's a good return for David Perron. But I'm with you guys. I just feel like all of these prospects that the Red Wings have right now in their system, there's still so many that it's we don't exactly know what we have yet, right? So you have to be careful when you're getting ready to deal them all away, when you've worked so hard to collect them. And like we said, we don't expect a Stanley Cup this year. We're building for the future still right now, but the pieces might be here. So unless you feel really passionately about someone that's available at the trade deadline, figure out what you have. And then maybe in a year or two, you might be talking about, okay, let's deal some of these pieces to bring in some of the pieces we need to fill the holes on our NHL roster.
That could help with value from our end too, right? Like there's some guys that, if you don't know the value, the team you're trading them with certainly doesn't either, right? So like, that's another great point. Like obviously that could help raise the value you're giving up as well. So for sure.
Yeah, I think one of the good points of that is someone like Marco Kasper, who had a slow start to the season and is now absolutely on fire. It takes him a little bit to get used to the game. And I think it goes back to Chris's question, like, when do we see Carter Mazur in a Red Wings jersey? And he's another guy that, do you know the extent of what Carter Mazur can do? And we saw him, he was our dark horse, I think, at the beginning of the season, that if he would have had a good enough camp and a good enough preseason, that I think he might have been able to sneak his way onto the team, because his development is more suited for a bottom 6 role. Not that that's his ceiling, but his style of game is grit, in your face, piss you off style hockey, but at the end of the day could be a top 6 player, but could develop in a bottom 6 role. And Mazur's been doing very well with the Griffins. And he's another one where, do you know what you have at this point in a Carter Mazur? Do you know what you have this point? I mean, you got Nate Danielson, who just got traded to Portland. He's another one who's going to have to come up through the system. But Yzerman's done so well, and there are people, again, that are complaining about Yzerman's drafts and where's all the picks and how come they're not playing for the team. When you don't get lottery picks, those guys take a while to develop. And the worst way to develop your prospects is to throw them directly into the NHL and tell them to have at it. And if you look at it, and you could kind of see it, and it's not a knock to Michael Rasmussen, but he probably should have went back to junior that first year and just dominated at a junior level before coming up, because when you put him in that such a high pressure situation, from playing with 16, 17, 18-year-olds to playing against men, it's a gigantic jump. So it's more of a be patient. Like Axel Sandin Palika, you might not see him in Grand Rapids next year. He might take another year to come over to North America. It's patience with the prospects. We will see them eventually. The ones we've identified as, and I mean, we're smart enough to say that's a good prospect. They'll make it eventually. It's not going to be right now. And it's exciting because they're so good and it's the future of the team. But what they're trying to do now is Yzerman he built a dynasty in Tampa. He's trying to do the same thing in Detroit. And it takes time. It takes patience. It takes a rolling cap. It takes a lot of prospects. And he set that up going forward. Anything else you guys have on the trade deadline? What you'd like to see happen? Any crazy moves? How we can fleece Ottawa again and make them more sad?
No, I think
let's just
overall,
beat them on Wednesday. Can we just do that?
Exactly.
There we go.
Well, also, it'd be a fun little caveat because I think Tampa Bay is done playing, right? For they're in their All-Star break now. If you beat Ottawa, I think you technically take third place in the division on a tiebreaker heading into the All-Star break. So it'd be doesn't mean anything, but it would make you feel good. And the Detroiters need something to make them feel good after what happened on Sunday. We're not going to name it, but after what happened on Sunday, it'd be nice. It'd be nice.
Brian, I think you've brought it up 8 times. So if you want to talk about it, we can, dude.
No, we have not. I have not brought it up 8
I brought
times.
it up once.
Yeah,
I brought it up.
Scotty's always looking to make me look bad on our shows. He frequently succeeds, though. So,
So yeah, the Red Wings, if they do beat the Ottawa Senators, they will have 50 games played, same as Tampa. We right now have a game in hand on them. We will each have 59 points. Same number of regulation wins, same number of regulation losses, and same number of overtime losses. We will be absolutely tied with them.
But don't we have the head-to-head because we've beaten them twice this season?
We would get the head-to-head. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. So that would be the tiebreaker right there. But we would leapfrog the Toronto Maple Leafs, who will at that point have 3 games in hand on us. But they're riding the struggle bus back and forth right now. So I want to thank you guys for hopping on to do this with me. It's been a lot of fun. I like to get a kind of a meeting of the minds a couple times a season just to make sure everyone's on the same page. And that we throw the ideas off each other, and it's always great to talk to you guys. And we go back and forth online. We see each other when we can, but it's good to get us all in the same Zoom room to break stuff down. I want to give you guys a chance to shout out your socials, what you got going on. We're going to start with you, Daniella.
All right, socials at Daniella Bruce _ because someone still has Daniella Bruce without the underscore, and I cannot hunt them down. Trust me, I keep trying. No, but Daniella Bruce _ and Red and White Authority coming out this week. We're actually going to have Emily Kaplan joining us from ESPN to get a nice little national perspective. Sweet. Yeah, she's excellent. She's going to have some great stuff for us, so that'll be the next podcast.
Love Emily Kaplan, by the way. She's fantastic.
She's amazing.
Scotty and I frequently talk whenever there's an ESPN broadcast of the Wings game. We frequently talk that she's probably our favorite person that they have on their broadcast.
100%.
She's so great.
Which is why I made this shirt. National announcers versus Detroit hockey, because most of them hate us, but Emily is fantastic.
Emily's a dog.
I didn't even notice that. I didn't even read your shirt until right now. That's amazing.
Should we take a couple minutes to talk about that Panthers Red Wings broadcast from a couple of weeks ago where Paul Biasina didn't want to give Red Wings any props? Or
no, you can shout out your socials though, Brian. That's cool.
At Lots the Wings. What's your socials, Brian?
At LO_Red Wings is our Twitter account. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram as well. My personal Twitter account is at Brian Fisher WWJ, because I work at WWJ News Radio 950. Scotty, what's yours?
Mine is at Bentley Scotty. It took me a while to think of that. That's my personal. That's the Red Wings, and then I do Locked On Tigers as well. Yeah, Cold Keith extension, fun. Pitchers and catchers right around the corner. Super, super pumped. So yeah, it should be a fun year for that as well. And then I write for the news. You can check out all that stuff.
So we could use the hockey meme on the Tigers now. What? They signed this guy to this contract without playing a single game in the MLB?
Right. Dude, well, it's weird. We don't have to like I will go forever, so please cut me off. But like they will, like, this is the first time the Tigers have done that, right? Like that's uncharted territory for them. That's a popular thing in a lot of other sports. It's the first time the Tigers have really done that, so we'll see.
Do you have faith in Colt Keith?
Yeah, he's the
Lock
man.
up your future stars, baby.
He's
That's
so
what you
good,
do.
dude. I'm so pumped.
You can find me online at Breaking the Wing. You find the Grind Line Podcast online at Grind Line Pod. We'll give a shout out to the Hockey Podcast Network for hosting us and spreading us around. Vintage Detroit, which is the only place you should get your Detroit jerseys from and worked on. You can find all of us on YouTube in some format. Daniella's on all the Red Wings stuff. Locked On guys are on YouTube. We're on YouTube. Go find our stuff. Sub, like our videos. Turn on the notifications. Whenever stuff goes live, you will get notified. You can check out our merch on redbubble.com by searching the Grind Line. And I got an email today. I think we're going to be doing some shirts with Vintage Detroit. So we'll see about that. They have contacted me for t-shirts.
Nice.
So we'll see how that goes. But thank you guys again for coming on and spending some time with me. It's been awesome, and we're going to have to do it again. We'll do a season wrap-up at the end of the year.
It was a blast.
But that's going to do it for us tonight. So you stay classy, Gametime.
So that was fun, Scotty, huh? The meeting of the minds. That was our first time talking to Daniella. Obviously, we've done a crossover with Greg before, but I thought it went real smooth and a great way to kind of send the people off into the All-Star break, minus the one more game we got to play.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's always good, man. And it's also nice to just bounce like the thoughts that we have about the team off of other people, right? Just in general, because you and I talk every single day about this team, but it's nice to get the perspective of other people who cover the team. Our Daniella is talking to the players consistently. Like, just getting that perspective is really cool too.
Yeah, and obviously thanks again to Greg. He did a fantastic job hosting us. He kind of drove the conversation for the roundtable. He did a great job. So thanks to both those guys for hopping on and having us as well. So appreciate that a bunch. And we'll talk to you guys again tomorrow. We'll do a game preview for the game against the Ottawa Senators, the final game before the All-Star break, and a chance to take third in the Atlantic Division.
We ball.